There's a subtle misconception that prevents countless individuals from realizing their aspirations, and what's most intriguing is that most aren't even aware they make it daily. I experienced it myself. I spent years convinced that my successes were merely reflections of external factors, a scarcity of opportunities, my limited education, my challenging background, and even my bad luck. And perhaps you felt this way too, the perception that despite working hard, putting in effort, and cultivating optimistic thoughts, opportunities don't seem to materialize as expected. Have you ever wondered why some individuals seem to progress endlessly in life, while others merely subsist, despite all their effort? The explanation for this lies in what I call the silent flaw, and it's considerably more widespread than you might imagine. From childhood, we're taught to believe that existence is simply a series of events that happen to us. You've probably heard sayings like, "Money doesn't grow on trees," "Nobody gets rich without being sly," or "You have to suffer to succeed in life." Such statements become the lens through which we view the world, but what's most alarming is that they become the lens through which we view ourselves. The silent flaw begins precisely here. Most people try to change their outcomes without first transforming their self-perception. And that's like building a 30-story building on a shaky foundation. The structure might rise for a few feet, but sooner or later, it will collapse. How many times have you started something with full vigor, only to find yourself weeks or months later without enthusiasm, disheartened, feeling like something invariably drags you back to square one? It's not fate, predestination, or a lack of competence. It's your self-perception. It's the mental barrier that you, unconsciously, placed within your own mind. I was forced to acknowledge this reality through my own experience. After dropping out of academia and taking on modest, aimless jobs, I lacked desires, goals, aspirations, everything. I was merely surviving. I recall one particular day, while working at the Rescue Corporation, observing life and asking, is this all there is? To dedicate years to paying off debts and just get by? And perhaps you've experienced a similar emotion, that internal unease of understanding that you came into the world for something more significant, but without discerning the path. It was during this phase that I stumbled upon a literary work that radically changed my trajectory. However, beyond the book itself, what truly transformed everything was the definitive understanding that I had become a direct result of my own psyche. If I wanted a renewed future, it would be imperative to forge a new conception of myself. And most people don't grasp this elementary maxim: you don't attract what you want, but rather what you believe you're worthy of. And that perception changes the entire scenario. Academia already endorses this finding. Recent studies in well-being psychology, economic behavior, and emotional health show that individuals with a robust self-image tend to be more daring, persevere with greater dedication, identify favorable opportunities that others overlook, and transform setbacks into stepping stones for advancement. Conversely, those who, despite aspiring to remarkable achievements, perceive themselves as diminished, inadvertently undermine their own outcomes. This is why a vast number of individuals begin a metamorphosis with vigor, a diet, a new professional position, learning activities, new financial behaviors, but ultimately return to square one. It's not a lack of determination. It's a configuration of the mind. Ask yourself, on how many occasions did you have full knowledge of what needed to be done, but simply abstained? On how many opportunities did you avoid a chance, fearing you weren't fully capable? In how many circumstances did you postpone an aspiration because you judged the moment was never ideal? Previously, I assumed that the passage of years, the economic landscape, the financial situation, a lack of education or connections constituted my impediments. However, with the passage of time, I uncovered something profoundly powerful: all those factors were irrelevant. The genuine obstacle resided within me. The imperceptible flaw that prevents most of humanity from realizing their intentions is the conviction that optimism alone is enough. It isn't enough. Your existence only transforms when your mental self-perception changes. It's fundamental to harmonize your thoughts, your emotions, and your self-image with the desired outcomes. It's not about uttering, "I crave abundance," it's about transforming yourself into the being who personifies and exudes opulence, even before it manifests. And if you find yourself stuck in the same cycle for several years, don't worry, that doesn't mean there's something flawed in your essence. It merely means you're trying to build a renewed existence with outdated beliefs. And that approach never succeeds. Today, I propose that you begin an introspection about just one question: who do you truly believe yourself to be? Not what you vocalize to others, but what emanates from within you in solitude. The outcome of that question establishes where your journey currently stands and where it's headed. For, as long as you don't consider yourself a valuable, competent, and worthy being, life won't be able to manifest in your reality what you desire. And this precept applies to financial resources, effective bonds, physical well-being, success, and meaning in life. The genesis of everything is internal. Now that you've grasped this fundamental guideline, we can delve deeper into the analysis, and as we begin the step-by-step investigation, you will clearly discern why your successes up to the present have been the faithful mirror of what you harbored about yourself, even if you never realized it. The moment I began to grasp that my successes didn't emanate from the exterior, but rather from my inner universe, my entire perspective transformed. However, before this metamorphosis, I proceeded as most still do. I sought to improve my existence by merely altering physical effort, dedicating myself to more hours of labor, executing more tasks, striving to be productive, seeking to satisfy everyone, aiming to gain some approval to finally feel worthy. Yet, this is the manifestation of the silent flaw. When an individual believes they lack aptitude, lack merit, are not worthy, they can dedicate themselves intensely for one entire day and still won't succeed in overcoming the intrinsic barrier that limits them. It's possible you've already experienced such a situation. You dedicate yourself to work, to study, to the struggle, but it seems that something always obstructs genuine progress. You gain a little more and quickly lose it. You start an endeavor, and it doesn't prosper. You elaborate a project, and it remains only on paper. This doesn't happen because you're unaware of the necessary actions, but rather because you still act according to a self-perception that belongs to the past. And no one can build a distinct future with an obsolete identity. Frequently, many individuals feel disillusioned regarding the passage of years, their maturity, the fortune that still eludes them, the wasted chances, and they ponder, if only I had started earlier, if I had valuable contacts, if I possessed greater education. However, this mode of reasoning engenders a dangerous emotional pattern, a cycle in which you persuade yourself that the capacity for control always resides externally. And by believing that strength is external, you transform into a hostage of conditions. This is the imperceptible confinement that keeps skilled, insightful, and diligent individuals confined to an ordinary existence, even if they possess all the attributes to flourish. Experts in psychology and human behavior research demonstrate that those who assume intrinsic responsibility for their achievements exhibit a significantly greater propensity to become leadership figures, entrepreneurial visionaries, and creators. Whereas those who believe that the future is in the hands of others tend to preserve safe, yet unsatisfactory, existences, because they don't conceive of the possibility of modifying the course of events. And note, it's not that these individuals lack potential. They simply haven't been taught how to manage it. I once was such a person. When I belonged to the rescue battalion, earning a restricted salary, devoid of concrete projections for advancement, I examined my own trajectory and almost convinced myself that that would be my definitive outcome. And it's possible you're experiencing something analogous right now, working in an environment where you realize you're not even utilizing 10% of your abilities, possessing talent for much more, but without envisioning a direction. And it's at this point that the silent flaw emerges, masked. It convinces us that it's more prudent to persist in the current situation. It persuades us that the time is not yet right to dare something grand. And the most lamentable thing is that, by cultivating such thoughts, you are shaping your psyche to believe that you are incapable, even if, deep down, you are. I vividly recall the inaugural occasion when I decided to challenge that conviction. With meager resources, devoid of experience, and without any formal academic instruction, I simply resolved that it was time to transform. I left the Rescue Corporation and founded a cleaning company. It was an overwhelming impact for my family, for my social circles, and even for myself. However, it was at that very moment that I grasped a fundamental principle: once you choose to reshape your self-perception, the universe begins to conspire in your favor. In my first year, despite having limited knowledge of business management, I managed to generate revenue exceeding $50,000. This achievement wasn't due to my technical expertise. It happened because, ultimately, I began to see myself as capable, worthy, and destined for a higher accomplishment. People would ask, "How did you do that?" And the reply was invariably the same: I changed internally before I changed externally. Allow me to ask you something right now: do you genuinely believe you are worthy of the existence you desire? Don't give a rushed answer. Internalize it. Because if there's even a small part within you that still hesitates, it's that part that restricts your progress. Life doesn't conform to your words, it responds to your energetic resonance. And that vibration is defined by how you perceive yourself. That's why individuals invest in training, skill building, and action plans without seeing transformations. The explanation is simple: if you don't visualize yourself as someone capable of managing finances, cultivating constructive relationships, achieving success, or performing with excellence, your psyche will create scenarios that reaffirm your pre-existing pattern. How many individuals have you seen rise financially only to soon return to their previous level? Athletes, public figures, highly paid professionals. Many reach the pinnacle and subsequently lose everything. Not for lack of ability, but because their core identity never aligned with the success they achieved. An illustrative and unfortunate case is that of Mike Tyson. One of history's most prominent boxers, possessing a remarkable career and a fortune that exceeded hundreds of millions of dollars, yet he squandered almost all of it because he hadn't proportionally cultivated an emotional identity capable of sustaining the lifestyle he had attained. When the mind cannot embrace wealth, the individual themselves, subconsciously, dismantles it. It's likely you've witnessed such an occurrence. And before we proceed, I have an essential request for you: if up to this point you are understanding my explanation and if it resonates with your experience, please hit like and subscribe to the channel. You underestimate the impact such a simple act can have. It signals to YouTube the relevance of this material, helping this message reach others who may be immersed in circumstances similar to yours. This type of teaching has transformed my own life, and I firmly believe it can bring about the same change for countless people who have never had access to this knowledge. Now, I want to propose a small challenge. Over the course of the next 3 days, observe your thoughts and notice how many times you depreciate yourself, limit yourself, or assert to yourself that something is complex, unattainable, or distant. Do this with discernment, because perception is the first step to breaking this cycle. You cannot change what you do not yet recognize. And now that we've begun to shed light on this internal structure, in the subsequent part 1 we'll demonstrate how to reconfigure this self-image, how to replace limiting beliefs with others that truly propel your journey, and how ordinary individuals are currently doing this to build extraordinary lives, including people you know and follow. Having already begun to identify the silent flaw and realizing that your external reality is merely a mirror of what you cultivate within, it becomes crucial to move on to the stage that transforms everything: the reprogramming of your self-image. This transcends merely repeating generic affirmations or attempting to convince yourself with motivational phrases. It means, in truth, rebuilding the mental foundation upon which your existence is built. And this reconstruction begins with understanding. You will never again see yourself in the same way when you grasp that what manifests today is not a result of your desire, but of your mental conditioning. People who were taught from an early age to believe in their abilities, their strength, and their capacity to learn what's needed, naturally develop with a sense of vast possibilities. In contrast, those who heard incessant criticism, faced limitations, and heard phrases like, "That's not for you," "Don't aim so high," "Be pragmatic," grow up with a restricted view of what they can achieve. And note this carefully: no one needs to verbalize this to you nowadays, you do it yourself, automatically, when you consider that you are not competent for something. The essential thing is to assimilate that your subconscious is not shaped by what you desire, but by what you reiterate with emotional charge. All the fears, uncertainties, obstacles, blocks, and restrictions you currently experience did not originate with your birth, but were gradually implanted throughout your life. And what is the implication of this? It implies that you can also deconstruct, replace, and reprogram these convictions. Neuroscience has already proven something exceptional: our brain isn't static, it's malleable. And phenomena like neuroplasticity clearly demonstrate that new thought patterns, when exercised with vigor and consistency, generate new neural connections, new interpretations, and consequently, new behaviors and concrete results in life. Science corroborates what, for decades, I've conveyed to thousands of people: you are not predestined by what you've learned. You can completely reinvent yourself. But how do you apply this practically? I will present simple examples that can be useful for most people today. Suppose someone grew up with the conviction that money is scarce, that it's only obtained through sacrifice. This person might receive a raise at work and still quickly spend it all, incur debts, invest poorly, or get involved in complex financial situations. This isn't bad luck. It's the subconscious realigning life to the comfort level the individual believes they deserve. Imagine another person who aspires to entrepreneurship, but when considering opening their own business, is assailed by apprehension. What if it doesn't work? What if I lose money? What if I fail? This isn't fear of reality. It's a fear rooted in past emotional experiences. It's the subconscious protecting the individual from what it interprets as danger, even if that danger is just a positive transformation. Similarly, think about relationships. Someone who grew up hearing that love causes pain, that no one can be trusted, that everyone leaves, will build relationships with apprehension, distrust, anxiety, and often push away precisely what they most desired to have. Do you perceive the recurrence? Life doesn't grant your wishes. It responds to your programming. Now, I want to present you with a notorious example of someone who altered his own reality by understanding this principle: Jim Carrey. Before establishing himself as one of the greatest icons of global comedy, he was poor, worked odd jobs, and lived with his family in hardship. However, he did something that seemed foolish at the time. He wrote himself a check for $10 million and kept it in his wallet, imagining that situation was already his. He not only made this visualization but also mentally built, each day, the identity of the man who would be capable of earning that amount. Years later, he received a contract for precisely that amount when starring in the movie Dumb and Dumber. This isn't mere coincidence. This is the synchronicity between internal identity and external reality. What I want you to understand is that there's no miracle, there's alignment. When you modify your self-image, your mind starts to discern opportunities that were previously imperceptible. You begin to act differently, to think differently, to communicate differently, and all of this alters your emotional responses to life. And this is significant because people tend to believe that success is something that happens quickly, like a major breakthrough. But, in most cases, genuine transformation begins with small internal adjustments, a new thought, a new belief, a new mental habit, which subsequently accumulate until they convert into tangible results. Science also confirms this. Research indicates that people who implement small changes in mindset and behavior persistently have a much higher chance of generating real transformations than those who try to change everything at once and cannot maintain the pace. But how do you reprogram this self-image? I offer you a simple yet powerful exercise. During the next 7 days, daily, before sleeping, answer the following question in writing: who do I need to become to live the life I desire? Don't write what you need to do. Write who you need to be. Because it's identity that determines action, not the inverse. People who perceive themselves as winners act like winners, even before achieving victory. People who see themselves as leaders lead before they are recognized. People who see themselves as successful behave as successful before money materializes. This is the movement that generates transformation. And when you start writing every day, your mind will begin the process of absorbing, reconnecting, and reorganizing your internal emotional pattern. And this isn't theory. This is practice. Think honestly now, how many opportunities have you failed to experience because you still saw yourself as less than you truly are? How many doors could have opened if you had trusted yourself sooner? This question might be a bit uncomfortable, but it's also liberating. The good news is, if you've made it this far, you've already begun to awaken. In the next segment, we will delve deeper into the connection between your emotional resonance and how it influences your frequency of success. This will help you understand why certain individuals achieve success even in challenging situations, while others stagnate despite having unique opportunities. It's crucial to address an often overlooked aspect that directly impacts the nature of the achievements you manifest: your emotional alignment. Even with the most effective planning, the most refined strategy, or the most organized schedule. If your internal frequency is out of harmony, you will attract barriers, delays, self-sabotage, and outcomes that fall short of expectations. A large portion of the population believes that the law of attraction is simply about having optimistic thoughts, but this perception is flawed. If your thoughts are positive but your feelings are adverse, such as fear, uncertainty, apprehension, or the conviction of not being worthy, then the energetic wave you emit to the cosmos is unfavorable. And the universe reacts to the transmitted frequency, not to what is verbalized as a desire. For this reason, countless individuals yearn for abundance but exude scarcity. They aspire to affection but emit dread. They desire opportunities but radiate hesitation. And perhaps you've experienced this yourself. You recognize your ability to go further, you know you have aptitude, but your mind interferes with progress with questions like, what if it doesn't work? What if I suffer losses? What if I fail? The issue isn't in the aspiration itself, but in the emotional nuance that accompanies it. When I began my journey into the studies of individual growth, one point captured my attention: individuals who achieved remarkable feats shared a unique characteristic. They emitted the frequency of their goals before realizing them. They experienced the feeling before witnessing the manifestation. They mentally established themselves in the state of having already attained what they desired. This capacity is immense, as the brain is unable to distinguish between a genuine experience and an intensely imagined one. This is why Olympic-level athletes practice mentally before competing. Research indicates that the brain of an athlete imagining a competition activates the same neural areas that would be stimulated during physical execution. This truth applies to all sectors of existence. If you project mentally with clarity and intensity, your psyche begins to devise pathways to convert what is conceived into tangible reality. It's not witchcraft, but neurological knowledge. And by continuously repeating this process, your body and mind harmonize with the future you long for. You cease to emit the sensation of absence and begin to radiate the feeling of accomplishment. However, why do such a significant number of individuals fail to execute this persistently? The explanation lies in the accumulated emotional baggage from their past. Fear doesn't arise from the future, it springs from past memories. The feeling of guilt comes from experiences already lived. Shyness results from comparisons, rejections, and criticisms that have remained internalized. The emotional frequency of most people is not defined by their aspirations, but rather by what they have not yet been able to transcend. How many individuals do you know who are unable to start a new cycle because they are still tied to a pre-existing one? How many harbor grudges, emotional wounds, failures, disappointments, and these traits become the emotional lens through which they interpret reality? This occurrence is far more common than one might suppose. And even individuals of great wealth, celebrities, successful, and admired people experience this reality. An emblematic case is that of Britney Spears. She achieved global notoriety, garnered acclaim, influence, and prominence. However, her emotional life was in deep turmoil. The outcome was a public crisis that affected her professional trajectory, her financial autonomy, and even her individual freedom for a period of years. This reveals an unquestionable truth: the external scenario will never surpass the internal landscape. You can conquer the world, but if you don't conquer yourself, the world slips away. And how do you alter this emotional alignment? It's imperative that you grasp a straightforward principle: ideas generate visualizations, visualizations evoke feelings, feelings establish resonances, and resonances shape outcomes. It's an interconnected sequence. It's futile to try to regulate only what you feel without first managing what you think. And it's unproductive to attempt to control thought without acquiring the ability to build mental scenarios that support this new circumstance. Here, I present an effective practice that can be implemented by any individual, anywhere. Over the coming 7 days, each morning, upon waking, before checking your mobile device, before engaging with the external world, close your eyes and mentally visualize for approximately 2 minutes your future self, already enjoying the desired achievement. Envision this figure entering a space with full conviction. Observe this same person managing their financial resources with complete clarity. Notice them embracing perspectives that once caused apprehension. Feel the way this entity inspires, how it moves, how it carries itself. Because, the moment you begin to experience a renewed identity, your brain starts to register new neural arrangements. And if you maintain this emotional disposition regularly, your vibratory frequency will begin a process of transformation. Everyday individuals achieve such feats daily, often without realizing it. Consider the case of someone who desired a career transition. The moment this person finally perceives themselves as vigorous, capable, and worthy, they adopt corresponding attitudes. And, suddenly, opportunities appear that were always present but previously remained invisible. Now, visualize this premise applied to the economic sphere. Analyses of monetary behavior reveal that individuals who perceive themselves as financially secure are better equipped to save, invest, transact, request salary raises, seek favorable opportunities, and take risks more thoughtfully. Conversely, those who experience apprehension, embarrassment, remorse, or inadequacy tend to compromise their financial management, even when their incomes are higher. This demonstrates that wealth is not merely a number. Wealth is an emotional outlook that guides superior choices. And superior choices culminate in more significant successes. And you might ask, what if I don't yet have achievements that can sustain this new alignment? In that case, it becomes imperative that you grasp a fundamental precept: your transformation doesn't occur by aligning with what you possess. It materializes by aligning with what you desire. An individual with limited financial means can resonate with inadequacy or can resonate with development. A person starting a project can resonate with uncertainty or can resonate with conviction. The disparity isn't in external reality, but rather in the mental universe. And to help accelerate this transformative process, I propose a new endeavor. Over the next 7 days, whenever you identify the emergence of an unfavorable feeling, apprehension, disappointment, despondency, pause for 10 seconds and perform 3 slow, deep inhalations and exhalations. This unassuming action communicates an unequivocal message to your neurological system: I am in command. Although it appears simple, it begins to dismantle the instinctive model that traps you in the past. And now that your cognition has already begun to assimilate this new perception, in the next segment, we will advance to an even deeper topic: how to deliberately forge a new life path, harmonizing purpose, execution, feeling, and inner consonance. You will discern why certain individuals are capable of transmuting long periods of suffering into a remarkable existence, and why others remain static at the same stage, even when possessing means, opportunities, and aptitudes. As you begin to assimilate that everything you yearn for already lies in a latent state, a new level of self-confidence blossoms within you. The vast majority of individuals don't succumb due to a lack of ability, but rather due to a lack of recognition of the strength they possess. They direct their gaze outwards, seeking to alter external conditions, without realizing that the true root invariably resides within themselves. The law of attraction reacts to your inner essence, not to what you merely express as a desire. It is insufficient to aspire to opulence while perceiving yourself in a state of deprivation. There's no point in fantasizing about triumph while seeing yourself as insignificant. The cosmos doesn't react to your verbalizations, it responds to the energy you continuously perpetuate through your thoughts, feelings, and mental projections. When you finally grasp this truth, you begin to act with intentionality. You stop behaving as a reactive being and start behaving as a creative being. You determine what you want, select the corresponding mental representation, and initiate your actions as if it were already yours. This uncomplicated, yet profoundly powerful methodology stands as a cornerstone of everything, existing in the present as the individual who has already manifested their desires. Are you looking to attract abundance? Then observe your behaviors. How do you speak about wealth? What is your feeling when you settle a debt? How do you feel when paying a bill? How do you react to the success of others? These subtle emotional responses serve as a meter for your current frequency. If there is discomfort, bitterness, fear, or a sense of lack, that is okay, but it is a warning sign. That is what you are emanating, and consequently, that is what you are attracting. The metamorphosis of reality begins with altering your emotional pattern. And your emotional pattern shifts when you redirect the focus of your mind. Feel prosperous before the money appears. Feel secure before the opportunity arises. Feel loved before the person manifests. It may seem illogical to many, but this is how it operates. It has always operated this way and always will. A new phase of life begins when you choose to live from your inner vision, rather than from superficial impressions. With this, you operate on a new degree of consciousness, where cause and effect lose their mystery and become a tool. You become a co-creator of your own reality. And when this clarity works in your favor, everything transforms. Nothing more seems excessively distant, unattainable, or overwhelming. You understand that life has always mirrored who you are, not merely what you wish for. Now, aware, you can vibrate at another frequency, act on a higher level, and proceed with a new attitude towards the reality you build daily. Perhaps someone you know needs to hear this right now, someone facing the same silent struggle, needing just such a paradigm shift to alter their entire life's course. Share this material with that special person and foster transformation. Until the next stage of the journey.